At my brother's graduation party, my boyfriend proposed. I said yes, until his ex-wife showed up screaming, "He's still married." He laughed and said, "Only on paper." My aunt stood up, clapped, and said, "Just like my first three." Then my mom fainted. I was standing in my parents' backyard in Tempe, Arizona, still holding the plastic cup of cheap champagne someone shoved into my hand, when my whole life cracked open. My boyfriend, Mark, had just dropped to one knee right in front of my brother's graduation banner, and everyone around us was cheering like it was all some perfect family moment. I was in shock, but I said yes because the crowd was already reacting, and I didn't want to make a scene at my brother's celebration. But the scene made itself. Right when Mark slipped the ring on my finger, way too fast, like he was afraid I'd pull my hand back, this woman shoved her way through the picnic tables. She was red-faced, sweaty from the Arizona heat, and yelling at the top of her lungs. "He's still married," she screamed. "He is still legally married to me." Everything stopped. The music, the chattering, even the birds sounded like they paused midair. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I was going to throw up. Mark didn't even flinch. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize, he just laughed. This weird, casual laugh like someone had told him they screwed up the hot dog order. "Only on paper," he said, shrugging. "It's basically done." Basically. Done. I remember staring at him, trying to understand how the man I had been living with for 8 months acted like being married was just some small clerical error. Then my Aunt Lorna, who has absolutely no filter and loves attention more than breathing, stood up, clapped her hands, and yelled, "Just like my first three." People laughed. Like this was some twisted comedy sketch instead of my life falling apart. But my mom didn't laugh. She gasped, grabbed the edge of the table, and just dropped. Full faint. My brother yelled her name. My dad bolted from the grill. The entire party erupted into noise, chairs scraping, people yelling, kids crying. Meanwhile, Mark was still kneeling like the proposal wasn't already on fire. His ex-wife, I didn't even know what to call her, was shouting that he'd lied to me, that the divorce papers hadn't even been filed, that he'd told her she owed him one last chance. And the worst part, she wasn't screaming like a jealous woman. She was screaming like someone who had been pushed past every limit and finally snapped. I felt like I was watching it all from outside my body. The ring was still on my finger, sparkling like it was mocking me. Every pair of eyes in that backyard was drilling into me, waiting to see what I'd do. I opened my mouth, ready to say something, maybe demand answers, maybe break down, maybe just run. But before I could get a word out, Mark grabbed my wrist. Not gently, he stood up, leaned close, and whispered through his teeth, "Don't make this bigger than it is." That's when everything inside me flipped, because that tone, that wasn't embarrassment, it wasn't fear, it was control. Like I was the one causing a problem by reacting to him lying about something as massive as still being married. Before I could pull my arm back, someone stepped between us. Someone I hadn't talked to in nearly a year. Someone who had every reason to stay out of my life but clearly didn't plan to today. And the moment I saw who it was, my world shifted again, harder than the first time. The person who stepped between us was my older cousin, Daniel. We used to be close. He practically lived at my parents' house when we were kids, always dragging me along to bike rides or late-night movies. But we hadn't really spoken in the past year. Not since he told me he didn't trust Mark, and I accused him of being judgmental and jealous of anyone I dated. That was the last real conversation we had before he pulled away completely. Seeing him block Mark like that hit me harder than I expected. He stood there with his hand up like he was stopping traffic, eyes locked on Mark, jaw clenched. "Back up," he said, calm but deadly. "Now." Mark scoffed and rolled his eyes, but the funny thing was he listened. He took one step back, not because he respected Daniel, but because Daniel wasn't the kind of person you argued with directly. He had this quiet intensity that made people rethink whatever stupidity they were about to commit. I felt my chest loosen just a little, like I could breathe again. But then everything around us came rushing back. My mom still unconscious on the grass, my dad kneeling over her shaking her shoulder, my brother pacing and on the verge of tears, and the ex, his wife, still yelling at anyone who would listen that she had proof. And she did. She wasn't bluffing. She pulled out her phone, hands trembling, and showed my dad the court record. I didn't even need to go look at it to know it was real. Her voice cracked when she said, "He told me he needed more time. He told me we weren't done." I felt sick. like I had been walking around with a stranger for months. But here's the thing. If you had told me all this a year ago, I wouldn't have believed you. Because I wasn't just in love with Mark. I was in this foggy, addictive version of love where everything felt good because he made it feel so intense. Love bombing, but I didn't know that phrase back then. He was charming in that loud, confident way that made people think he had everything figured out. When we first met at a friend's birthday party in downtown Phoenix, he made me feel like I was the only woman in the room. He listened to me like my words had weight. He remembered everything I said, down to the stupid details. No man had ever done that for me, and I was vulnerable. I'm not ashamed to admit it now. I had just gotten out of a messy breakup with someone who made me feel small and invisible. So when Mark came in with his big personality and bigger affection, I fell fast. Too fast. Within 3 months, he convinced me to move in with him. Daniel told me I should slow down, that something about Mark seemed off. He didn't say it in a dramatic way. He said it like someone who had been watching from the outside and saw something I couldn't. But I didn't want to hear it. I chose Mark. I pulled away from my family, from Daniel, even from some friends. Mark always had reasons why certain people didn't like him, and he'd twist it so I felt like they were the problem. And now all those choices were staring me in the face at this graduation party, and it felt like my entire life had been one long, stupid trap I'd walked into willingly. But here's the part that still shakes me when I think about it. Daniel didn't just show up today. He hadn't been planning to come at all. He came because someone warned him. Someone who knew this explosion was coming hours before I did. When Daniel said he'd been warned, something inside me snapped into sharp focus. The noise of the backyard, people whispering, my aunt trying to revive the drama like it was her Super Bowl, the ex-wife sobbing into a paper napkin, blurred into the background. I grabbed Daniel's arm. Warned by who? I asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked to Mark, then to my dad still helping my mom sit up, then back to me. It was the look someone gives before they tell you something you're not ready for. "Let's move," he said quietly. "Not here." But here was exactly where Mark wanted this conversation to happen, because he stepped forward, all confidence and fake calm, like he could still spin this into something reasonable. "Can we not do the conspiracy stuff right now?" he said, nodding at Daniel like he was an annoying neighbor. "This is blown way out of proportion." Out of proportion. My mom had literally fainted, but sure. Daniel ignored him and put his hand on my shoulder, gentle but firm, guiding me away from the center of the chaos. We walked toward the side of the house, where the music speakers were still buzzing lightly with the static of a paused playlist. I could feel people watching us, whispering, trying to piece together the drama. I hated that I was part of the show. I hated that I'd let myself become someone people whispered about. Daniel stopped near the wall and turned to me. His face softened, which somehow scared me more. "You're not gonna like this," he said. "I already don't like anything," I said. "Just tell me." He sighed through his nose. His coworker reached out to me. That threw me. "What? How would they even know who you are?" He hesitated. "Because they were trying to reach you first, but Mark blocked them." Cold washed through me, completely numb, like my body just shut off parts of me to survive what I was hearing. Daniel continued. "She said things weren't adding up with him. She said there were rumors in his office. And then she said she overheard him talking on the phone about getting you locked in before something came out." "Locked in," I repeated, like the words didn't make sense in English. She didn't know what he meant, but she said it sounded serious enough that she wanted someone to know. That phrase rattled around in my skull, locked in, like I was a contract, like I was a deadline, like I was leverage. I asked Daniel what else she told him, but before he could answer, someone yelled from across the backyard, "Where is she?" It was Mark's voice, sharp, annoyed, like I had left a conversation without permission. He was looking around for me, standing tall, chest puffed out, ring box still in his hand like he thought this whole thing could be salvaged with a speech. Daniel stepped in front of me again, blocking me from view. "I don't want you talking to him alone," he said quietly. "Not anymore." And in that moment, for the first time since the screaming started, I felt genuinely afraid, not of embarrassment, not of heartbreak, but of Mark himself. The way he scanned the backyard like he owned the place. The way he talked about being only married on paper. The way he tried to control the narrative even with his wife standing there, shaking, crying, exposing him. The picture of who he really was started coming into focus, and it didn't look anything like the man I thought I knew. But the real escalation didn't hit until a few seconds later. Because Mark finally spotted us, and when he stormed over, his wife, yes, wife, followed him. She was crying, shaking, gripping her phone like it was the only thing keeping her upright. And she said something that froze Daniel, me, the entire backyard. He didn't just lie about the divorce, she said. You should ask him about the lease, the insurance, the account he opened in your name. I swear the air went silent. I hadn't signed anything. At least, I didn't think I had. But Mark's face, his face told me everything. When she said the account he opened in your name, I felt this punch of cold hit the back of my neck. The kind of cold that comes from knowing something awful is true before anyone even proves it. I stared at Mark, waiting, hoping for him to laugh it off the same way he laughed off still being married. Some pathetic part of me wanted him to deny it so fast and so hard that I could cling to the idea that this was some misunderstanding. But he didn't deny it. He didn't even look at me. He looked at her, his wife. And he hissed, "Why would you bring that up?" That was it. One sentence, one glare, and suddenly I knew I hadn't been paranoid. I hadn't been overreacting. I hadn't been emotional. I had been played. Daniel stepped slightly in front of me again, but I pushed forward because I needed to hear every ugly detail. "What account?" I asked. "What did he do?" Mark's wife wiped her cheek with the back of her shaking hand. "It was supposed to be temporary," she said, voice cracking. "That's what he told me. He said he needed a clean name, someone with better credit, and that he'd fix it before anyone noticed." My stomach lurched. "Named what?" I asked. "He opened a credit line," she said. "In your name, and I think," she swallowed hard, "I think he forged your signature." A buzzing started in my ears. I felt my knees loosen. Daniel grabbed my arm to steady me. "You're telling me he committed identity fraud?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. Mark finally spoke. "Oh my God, will everyone just calm down? It's not fraud. I used her info because she gave it to me. You filled out the rental application, remember?" "I never signed anything financial," I said. "Not for you." "You don't remember everything you sign," he said with a shrug, and that's when something inside me broke in a new way. Not like a snap, more like a slow, sickening tear. His wife shook her head. "He did the same thing to me, twice." Mark shot her a glare so sharp it could have cut bone. "Why are you making this worse for yourself?" "For myself," she choked out. "You dragged me into this mess." Everyone was watching now, even the neighbors peeking over the wall. My mom, who had finally woken up, was being held upright by my dad, both of them staring at us like this was some nightmare they couldn't shake awake from. I stepped closer to Mark, my voice shaking, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Why would you open anything in my name?" He didn't blink. He didn't hesitate. "Because your credit is better than mine," he said simply. "And I needed the account before the job background check. It's not that deep." Not that deep. Not that deep. It felt like the world was tilting sideways. I could feel Daniel stiffen beside me, like he was trying not to explode. The ex-wife covered her mouth, crying harder, whispering, "I told you he'd ruin someone else." "I told you," Mark threw up his hands. "Oh, come on, she's being dramatic. None of this is as bad as they're making it sound. It's just numbers, paperwork." It was right then, right in the middle of the chaos, that my brother's friend Mia, who worked at a bank, stepped forward and looked me dead in the eyes. "Do you know what happens if he misses payments on an account under your name?" she asked. "It hits your credit, your liability, your record, not his." I felt like I was drowning, but the twist wasn't done, not even close. Because Mia added one more sentence, one that gutted me. "And the account isn't small. It was flagged last week at my branch. He's already thousands in debt." Mark went pale. Finally, he looked scared. I don't remember walking away from him. I just remember suddenly being in my parents' living room, the blinds half open, my mom lying on the couch with a cold towel on her forehead, my dad pacing like he was waiting for someone to deliver a final verdict. Daniel closed the sliding door behind us, shutting out the chaos in the backyard. For the first time since the proposal, it was quiet, but inside my head, everything was screaming. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at my shaking hands, the engagement ring still wrapped around my finger like a cuff. I pulled it off before my brain even caught up, and I dropped it on the table so hard it bounced. Daniel sat across from me. "We have to deal with this fast," he said, "before he tries anything else." I nodded, but it felt like my body was moving separate from my mind. He opened it under my name, I said. Thousands. I didn't even know. My mom, pale but conscious now, murmured from the couch, "He did this while living with you." I pressed my palms to my eyes. "I feel so stupid." "You're not stupid," Daniel said firmly. "He's calculated. There's a difference." I didn't realize how much I needed someone to say that until the words hit me. I took a long breath and forced myself to think. Really think. I couldn't fall apart yet. "What do I do first?" I asked. Daniel leaned in. "We get documentation. We gather everything, texts, emails, mail he might have hidden, any financial statements. Then we go to the police." My stomach twisted. "Identity fraud," I said. It didn't feel real. "Not yet. And we talk to the bank manager," Daniel added. "Have them freeze the account. You need to get ahead of this before he goes nuclear." That word, nuclear, made something in me twitch. "Why would he go nuclear?" I asked. Daniel hesitated. "Because people like him don't fold. They escalate." I swallowed hard. My dad walked over and placed a folder on the table when he grabbed from the little office nook near the hallway. "This arrived last week," he said quietly. "It was addressed to you, but Mark picked up the mail that day. I found this stuck between couch cushions when I was vacuuming this morning." I opened it. It was a notice. A credit limit increase approval. Under my name. Mark had signed the bottom. Forged. Sloppy, but close enough that someone who wasn't looking wouldn't question it. My hands started shaking so hard the paper rattled. I felt nauseous all over again. "He planned this," I whispered. "He didn't, it wasn't impulsive." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Yeah, he planned it." My mom whispered a shaky prayer under her breath. Before I could say anything else, the sliding door opened again, slowly. Everyone turned. It was his wife. Her mascara was smeared. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes, they were focused in a way that made me sit up straight. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and you're not going to want to hear it. But you need to." Daniel stepped slightly in front of me again, protective on instinct, but she held up a hand. "It's not about the account," she said. "It's worse, a lot worse." My heart stopped for a second. She stepped closer to the table. "I didn't come here to fight you," she said softly. "I came to warn you because he's been doing this for years, and he's not done." I swallowed. "Warn me about what?" She looked at me with this mixture of fear and pity I'll never forget. "He didn't open the account just for money," she said. "He opened it because he needed a safety net before something else came out. Something he thought would blow everything up." My pulse hammered in my ears. What else?" She closed her eyes for a second. "When you broke up with your ex," she said slowly, "Mark already knew who you were." My entire body went cold. And then she said the sentence that shattered everything I thought I knew about how this started. "He targeted you on purpose." When she said targeted, I felt the word hit my chest like a brick. I couldn't even blink. Daniel froze beside me, like his brain was trying to process the same awful possibility mine was. I finally managed to speak. "What do you mean, he targeted me?" Mark's wife. Her name was Jenna, I should say her name now, pulled out a chair and sat down like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. She looked at me with this exhausted, hollow expression, the kind you only get after years of being emotionally gutted by the same person. "You think he met you by chance at that birthday party," she said. "But he didn't." I felt my throat tighten. My voice came out like a whisper. "He planned it," Jenna nodded slowly. "He knew about you before that night. Your breakup wasn't as private as you thought. Your ex, he told people about it. He made it sound messy, public." She looked down, twisting the hem of her shirt. "One of Mark's coworkers is friends with your ex. They mentioned you. They talked about how hurt you were. How vulnerable you'd been." I felt a wave of shame rise up my neck, like I had been walking around with my wounds showing and didn't even realize predators could smell them. "Why?" I asked. "Why would he even care? There's millions of people in Phoenix. Why me?" Jenna took a shaky breath. "Because," she said, "he was already in trouble. Financial trouble. Legal trouble. And he needed someone with clean credit, someone who lived alone, someone who wouldn't question things. Someone who would fall fast." Daniel swore under his breath and leaned forward in his chair, elbows on knees, like he needed to steady himself from punching the nearest wall. Jenna continued. "He didn't pick you because he loved you. He picked you because you were accessible." That word made me want to throw up. My dad pressed his hand to his forehead and whispered something too low to hear. My mom started crying softly, turning her face into a pillow. I shook my head. No, no, he couldn't have known that much about me. Jenna looked up. Her eyes were full of something worse than anger, regret. He knew where you worked, she said. He knew what field you were in. He knew you didn't have family nearby except your parents and cousin. He knew you had student loans but good standing. He knew you were desperate for someone to treat you better than your ex did. My hands went cold. My vision blurred. I grabbed the edge of the table to keep myself grounded. He researched me, I said. Like a project. Jenna nodded. And he rehearsed your first meeting, the jokes, the compliments, the way he made you feel seen. It worked on me the first time he did it. He just sharpened the act over the years. Daniel muttered, Jesus Christ. I felt something dark settle in my stomach. The kind of darkness that doesn't come from heartbreak, but from realization. Pure, sickening realization. Jenna leaned closer. I left him because I found messages on his laptop. He kept notes on people. Women he thought he could use. Some he tried. Some didn't fall for it. She swallowed hard. But you were exactly what he thought he needed next. Tears ran down my face without me even noticing. I felt humiliated. Exposed, dirty. Jenna reached out but stopped before touching me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry he made you feel loved just so he could use you. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, anger burning through the numbness. He targeted me, I repeated, but this time the words didn't break me, they hardened me. Daniel looked at me, his voice low. He didn't just lie, he said. He hunted. And suddenly everything clicked, the rushing proposal, the secrecy, the urgency, the controlling tone, the financial mess, the coworker's warning. He hadn't panicked today because he got caught cheating. He panicked because his plan was unraveling. But there was still one thing left. One question Jenna hadn't answered yet. Why? What was the deeper motive? What was the thing he was trying to get ahead of? When I asked her, Jenna hesitated hard. She looked toward the sliding door like she expected him to burst through it any second. Then she whispered, There's a reason he wanted to secure your credit, your address, and your signature. A reason he needed you locked in. And trust me, once you hear it, you'll understand just how far he was willing to go. Jenna didn't speak right away. She looked down at her hands like she was rehearsing the safest way to detonate a bomb. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Just tell me, I said. Please. She glanced at Daniel, then my parents, then finally back at me. Mark wasn't trying to marry you for love or even for access to money. That was part of it, but not the core. The real reason is darker. A cold heaviness settled in my stomach. Jenna took a breath that sounded like it hurt. You know how he kept saying his divorce from me was basically done? It wasn't. He never filed because filing would have forced him to turn over his financials. All of them. My dad frowned. What was he hiding? He's in severe debt, Jenna said. Worse than you know. Personal loans, gambling lines, credit card defaults, everything. And he's been dodging collections for years. He keeps changing addresses to confuse the system. He used mine. Then he used his brother's. Then he tried using a coworker's, and when that dried up, she looked right at me. He needed a clean slate, a new place to hide his mess. I felt my skin crawl. So he wanted to use my address. Not just your address, Jenna said quietly. He needed someone who would unknowingly tie themselves to him legally, someone he could funnel things through, debt, accounts, mail, insurance. He needed a partner on paper. On paper, the same words he used earlier like it was a joke. But why the rush? Daniel asked. He was trying to lock her in today. Why? Jenna swallowed. Because he's being investigated. The room snapped silent. For what? My dad demanded. Jenna's eyes filled with tears she didn't bother wiping away. Fraud, multiple counts. He used my identity. Before that, he used a coworker's. Someone finally filed a police report. And last week, she shook her head. Last week a detective reached out. They want him to come in for questioning. My breath caught. So he was trying to marry me, to hide behind me. It's worse, Jenna said softly. He told me once, back when I still believed he had a good side, that if things ever got dangerous for him, he'd shift the heat to someone who loved him enough not to suspect anything. She choked on a bitter laugh. He said the perfect partner was someone who trusted too easily. That sentence landed like a blade. My mom started crying again, harder this time. My dad cursed under his breath. Daniel's face went blank in that terrifying way where you know someone is past anger and into something colder. Jenna continued, voice shaking. He needed the marriage certificate so he could move his accounts, mail, and liabilities under your address without it raising flags. You're clean. You're steady. You're exactly the kind of person investigators don't look at twice. Every part of my body felt frozen. Trapped, sick, and then Jenna added the part that pushed me from horror into pure dread. He told someone at work that he had a new girl lined up who was perfect because she didn't think she needed to protect herself. I felt something inside me snap. He said once you two were married, Jenna whispered, and once enough paperwork was tied to your name, he could disappear and leave you with the fallout. Financial, legal, everything. Daniel stood up so fast his chair screeched against the tile. His fists were clenched at his sides. He was going to dump his crimes on her. Jenna nodded, shaking. Yes. A cold wave rolled through me, slow, devastating, suffocating. Mark didn't love me. He didn't even want me. He wanted a shield, a scapegoat, a clean identity to bury his dirt in. He proposed today not out of romance, not even out of panic. He proposed because time was running out. And he needed me trapped with him before the investigation hit his doorstep. My voice cracked as I whispered, he was going to ruin my life. Jenna didn't sugarcoat it. He was going to replace yours with his. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was on my feet, every nerve in my body firing in one clear direction. I wanted out, and I wanted him exposed. Daniel didn't ask questions, he grabbed his keys. My dad went for his wallet. My mom tried to get up, but I told her to stay. Jenna followed us to the door, offering one last warning. He'll try to flip this on you. He'll play victim, don't let him. I nodded, and we walked back out into the backyard. Mark was still there, pacing, running his hands through his hair like he was the one who'd been wronged. People had spread out, whispering, watching him explode in small, pathetic circles. When he saw me, he came storming over. Finally, he snapped. Can we talk like adults now? You're blowing this up. I told you nothing was intentional. Shut up, I said. Calm, flat, cold, he flinched. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't even look angry. And somehow, that scared him more than anything. Daniel stepped to my side like a wall. My dad stood behind me like backup. I pulled the forged credit notice from my pocket and handed it to Mark. What's this? He scoffed. You tell me, I said, since that's not my signature. He opened his mouth, but before he could begin lying, Daniel took out his phone and hit record. You're being ridiculous, Mark sputtered. Everyone signs stuff without thinking. You probably don't even remember. I cut him off again. The detective investigating you is going to love hearing that explanation. His face twisted. What detective? Jenna stepped forward from behind the crowd. The one who called me last week, she said. They're looking for you, Mark. His mask cracked. He didn't even try to hide it. That was all I needed. I lifted my phone. As of this moment, you are not allowed on my parents' property or near me. I'm reporting the identity fraud today, and the forged account, and the mail tampering, and anything else you've done. You have no proof, he snapped. Daniel tapped the screen of his phone. We have your wife's statement, we have the documents, we have the bank employee who flagged the account, and we have your reaction right now. Mark's confidence was dissolving fast, like someone had pulled a plug inside him. You needed me locked in, I said. For your debts, your crimes, your investigation. I leaned in slightly. But you picked the wrong person to trap. Then Jenna delivered the final hit. She knows everything now, Mark. You don't get to use her the way you used me. Mark's face fell completely. The crowd, the witnesses, the phones recording, he knew it was over. He tried to bluster one more time, tried to laugh, tried to act unbothered, but it came out choked and shaky. I took the ring from my pocket, held it up, and dropped it at his feet. It bounced once on the concrete. Pick that up, he barked. No, I said, but the police might. My dad called his attorney friend. Daniel walked me to the car. Jenna went to give her statement to my parents. And Mark watched all of us pull away, surrounded by the wreckage of his own making, knowing he'd lost the last person who was ever going to fall for his act. By the end of the week, the account was frozen. The fraud report was filed. The detective had my statement, and Mark was officially listed as a person of interest in an active investigation. I didn't get closure in a soft, healing way. I got it in a hard, clean, final way. The way you get when someone tries to steal your life and you take it back with both hands. And the kicker, the ring he proposed with wasn't even paid off. I know because the jeweler called, the bill was under my name. I told them to forward the debt to the police. Seemed fitting.